For the past few months across Cycling Weekly, we've been hard at work testing all of the best bikes to bring you our 2023 winners for Race Bike of the Year. Some of the best bikes on the market were tested across 4 categories, those being the best climbing bike, best aero bike, best value bike, and our overall best race bike. And finally, after all of that testing, we now have 4 winners. So without further ado, let's get into them. The need for a dedicated climbing bike may be reducing since aero bikes are edging ever closer to that UCI weight limit. But for those of us who don't have to adhere to the UCI rulebook, we can enjoy bikes that are as light as a feather. Also, you can get a better balance of speed and weight at a better price with a climber's bike. Climbers' bikes tend to be a little bit more comfortable, largely thanks to thinner tubes, and have a slightly more inspiring geometry than aero bikes. After all, what goes up must come down. And essentially, that sums up what we're looking for in the best climber's bike. A low weight, a snappy geometry, comfort, but also optimizations for speed, which is why our winner is the Cannondale SuperSix EVO. It got a load of aero updates in its 2019 iteration. The latest update, which was unveiled in March of this year, has been more evolution rather than revolution, but still packs aero tweaks to the tune of 11 watts saved over the previous generation. Personally, I love a lightweight frame matched with deep section wheels, and that's exactly what the SuperSix EVO provides. At a claimed 770 grams in a painted 56cm frame, it comes in as the lightest on test. And those 50mm deep hologram wheels, although not the lightest for their depth, match most of the hoops here millimetre for millimetre. The result is a bike that is lightning fast to accelerate and holds its speed really well. It's particularly well suited to surprise attacks and a spot of UK Strava hunting, where momentum into a brutally steep but relatively short climb is a key factor to success. It's the climbs where the SuperSix EVO really shines. Not only is it whisper light, but the geometry feels particularly well suited for climbing out of the saddle. Bombing down the other side, it's easy to push the limits that bit further, with the bike feeling poised but controlled. It's a worthy winner of our Best Climber's Bike award, but whilst it's impressively fast on the flat for a climber's bike and does sound out the vibrations better than others, it's neither as fast nor as comfortable as the Cervelo S5, although the SuperSix does steal the show on the climbs. In terms of price, the top spec SuperSix EVO is up there with the highest, although mercifully still below the £15,000 mark. Perhaps surprisingly, the entry-level model is the 4th cheapest on test, which you might not have expected from Cannondale. The winner of our best value bike for 2023 is the Giant Propel. The Giant Propel has long been one of the best aero bikes on the market, particularly when considering the performance and the spec you get for the price. And this latest iteration has brought a whole host of new improvements to the platform. It misses out on the title of group test winner, but it is a worthy victor in our best value category. Arguably, this is the more important award, as for the overwhelming majority of us, the question of value is equally high with straight up performance. Having long been known as an out-and-out aero bike, the Propel has softened off somewhat and is now more of an all-rounder, but it hasn't forgotten its past. Despite the slightly slimmer tube shapes, Giant claims that the new Propel is still 6.2 watts faster at 40 km an hour than the previous model. And it does certainly feel fast. Tucked up on the flatter sections of our testing loop, I was really able to motor along, holding my speed without any issues. It made for an interesting contrast to the Canyon Aero. With slimmer tubes and shallower 50mm wheels, we didn't get caught out by the crosswinds in the same way as we did on the Canyon. Also, with a combination of tyres mounted on wider rims and what felt like much better vibration from the front end of the bike, we weren't as shaken as we were on the Aero, and the Propel felt faster and smoother. Essentially, improvements all round. Whilst I do have a soft spot for aero climbing bikes, that's not an unreflective preference. If an aero bike picks up some elements of a climbing platform, honing in its handling and dropping some weight, that's a clear win to me. In its top spec layup with the fixed seat post, Giant has managed to get the Propel down to a claimed 845 grams, the second lightest aero bike on test, just behind the Cannondale V4 RS, which really is very impressive. So why hasn't the Giant Propel won the test? Well, despite the great handling, comfort and straight line speed, the Cervelo S5 does stand above the Propel in all of these areas. Where the Giant Propel really excels is in all of these qualities, but balanced against price. It's the entry level where the Propel really stands out. With the cheapest starting price, it's the only model on test to come in under £3,000. If you're interested in reaping the improvements in handling and Giant's latest aero modelling, this is your best option by far. This isn't a simple race to the bottom. Giant has managed to combine an excellent bike with an exceptional price. 80% of aerodynamic drag that you have to overcome comes from the rider themselves. The remaining 20% comes from the bike as a system. And it's the Trek Madone that we want to make up that 20%. The Trek Madone received a major update last year, addressing many of the criticisms from the previous iteration. First, it's gone on a crash diet, shedding 300 grams through ditching that ISO speed vibration dampening system. Second, that seat tube hole was added to help preserve the ride quality. And finally, a combination of new tube shapes and handlebar is said to save about 60 seconds over an hour's ride, whether you're riding at 45 or 25 kilometers per hour. Does the seat tube hole really make a difference to the comfort? Well, it does ride more smoothly than that wedge of a seat post would have you believe, but it's certainly not as smooth as the other models which have focused on allowing the seat post to flex, such as the Aero and the Scott Foil. The Madone was comfortable, but it's not a standout. It's the handling that harboured the greatest surprise. It really is incredibly fast, responding to the smallest shift in weight and the tiniest tweaks of the bars. There is variation between the other bikes on test. Some handle a bit faster and others a little bit slower, but the Madone stands very far apart from any of them. Some riders may appreciate this, but others may prefer a model which feels a little bit more controlled. The Madone is an absolute speed weapon. Those 51mm deep Bontrager Airless Pro wheels and the deep section tubes of the frame likely have something to do with it, but the most significant factor was the newly designed handlebar, which is the narrowest by quite some margin of all those that we tested. And it provided really good wrist support for hunkering down and getting into that aero hood's position. Typically, a size 54cm frame will be spec'd with 42cm bars, and the Madone's bars are 42cm, but that's just at the drops. Up at the hoods, the bars are narrowed down to just 39cm, helping you adopt that more aero position. But it's not compromising on the stance for when you're descending. Not only that, but the bar width varies greatly with the different frame sizes. In the smallest 47cm model, the handlebars measure just 35cm at the hoods. Now, there are many handlebar models out there which don't even dip below 38cm, so it's great to see smaller riders being accommodated for. Another thing that we love is that the three smallest sizes of the Trek Madone come with a wider saddle than the larger frame sizes, as disproportionately more women ride those smaller sizes, and the majority of women are better catered for with a wider saddle. Now, Trek doesn't make a big deal about this at all, they're just quietly getting on with what's right and what makes sense. You'll only really notice it if you go digging through the spec sheets. The Madone platform is quite exclusive. The top model is the second most expensive on test, and the entry-level model is the third most expensive. So it is a great bike, just for those who can afford it. Now it's time for our big award, the overall winner of our Race Bike of the Year group test. With its combination of straight line speed, cornering prowess and magic carpet ride quality, the S5 is a worthy winner of our Race Bike of the Year award. Although that's not to say that the choice was entirely straightforward or obvious. First, let's address why the S5 clinches the title of Race Bike of the Year, but not Best Aero Bike, and why the Trek Madone earned the latter, but missed out on the overall top spot. The first part is quite easy to explain. Although aero is a hugely important factor in the winning potential of a race bike, there are other considerations that must be taken into account. Handling is a key area. Having confidence and control and more elastic limits when you're railing around the corners is a major factor in your speed. Equally, just how well a bike minimises vertical deflection has big consequences for both the rolling resistance and the comfort. The Trek Madone excelled in terms of its aero performance, helped in large part by its quite unique handlebar design and sizing. However, the Madone is let down by its handling. As mentioned, personal preference is a factor here, but the Madone is notably more twitchy than all of the other models on test. Its comfort, while not jarring, isn't the best either. It's the handling that really sets the Cervelo S5 apart. It's quick to respond to a change of line, but manages to remain far from being twitchy. The result is that it's just so easy to rail into the corners, taking them tighter and faster. It's because you can be so confident that you won't accidentally exceed your limits that you get so much closer to them, and that really shows. The balance of the geometry is predominantly responsible for the S5's balanced handling. This particular wheel and tyre combo plays a sizable role too. To some extent, the bikes shouldn't be judged too harshly on the wheels, as this is something that can be changed pretty easily. That said, we are comparing full build bikes here, rather than just frame sets, so I think credit should absolutely go where it's due. The Reserve 52/63 wheels have a super wide internal rim width, coming in at 25mm on the front and 24mm at the rear. And this plumps the 28mm Vittoria Corsa tyres out to a whopping 31mm. But it also gives the shoulders of the tyres a much more gentle slope than any of the other models on test. The result is that you not only get a larger footprint providing more grip, but you also get a much more progressive feeling when you're loading them up and then banking over heavily in tighter corners. It also means that the ride quality of the S5 is actually better than all of the others on test, even those models with fancy flexing seat posts. Speeding over coarser sections of tarmac is palpably faster too, as those bumps are just absorbed rather than just pinging the bike about. There is no getting away from the weight of the S5. At 8.22 kilos for this SRAM Force build, the S5 is heavier than the comparable models. The Scott foil, albeit with SRAM Red, came in at 7.28 kilos. Despite this, the S5 doesn't feel heavy to ride, and in most cases, the gains in aero and rolling resistance will help you more than solely focusing on weight itself. The S5 gains across the board. Its handling, comfort, and aero more than make up for the extra mass. As a complete package, the Cervelo S5 deservedly wins our 2023 Race Bike of the Year award. Let me know down below, out of the 4 winners, which of them would you choose? If you enjoyed the video, then please do drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will see you again very soon.